Okay, 4.7, if you were here in class, we did that timeline sort of the French Revolution, putting into chronological order a whole bunch of events. Those events were Louis and Marie Antoinette are married. They are then crowned king and queen. The Americans could not have won their revolution without assistance from France. The meeting of the Estates General Louis is calling this in 1789 in an attempt to solve some of his country's problems. Third Estate doesn't care. They break away, name themselves the National Assembly. Tennis Court Oath is June 20th, 1789. July 11th, Jacques Necker is fired, the finance minister who was sympathetic to the Third Estate. As a direct result, the people go to the Bastille on the 14th of July to gather guns. The Great Fear, the news and momentum of revolution spreading in the late summer 1789. Night of August 4th, 1789, these laws being passed to dismantle the Ancien Regime, inspire the people, set up some goals for the revolution, that is the Declaration of Rights of Man and of the Citizen, and the Women's March, which directly leads to the royal family moving to Paris. If you want to watch these videos, remember this is John Green, some great review. He talks really, really fast, but if that helps you, please watch these videos. They're great, lots of good information. So by the end of 1789, the people are really getting excited about this potential for change, and they decide to create a slogan, something that they can chant, looks good on posters like this one, and we as historians have abbreviated that slogan, Liberty, Equality, Fraternity. The full thing is sort of united and indivisible for the Republic. We want liberty, equality, fraternity, or death. So we've removed that or death thing to make it a little less scary. If you see here on the poster, they have the slogan. We have some people who are revolutionary, some symbols of the revolution. The color red is always very symbolic of revolution. That hat on the top becomes known as very symbolic of the hats that people were wearing. It's very simple. It's not something a noble would wear. We have the new French flag, the tricolor. And then in the back, it's a little difficult to see, something called a fasces. It's a bundle of sticks. This is symbolism, again, borrowed from ancient Rome. This was a symbol that Rome used, and a couple other countries will use that we'll talk about this year, to symbolize, individually, sometimes we are weak, like a stick. But bundle us together. The people united as a group are very, very strong. Not much happens in 1790, but I do want to make sure you understand about this group called the émigrés, same root word as emigrant, meaning people who are leaving a country. People start leaving France because they are nervous about this revolution. The people who are leaving are most often nobles, upper class, even some clergy. They're worried about this idea of liberty, fraternity, equality, or death. That seems a bit extreme to them. So lots of people start leaving. They leave France, even though France is their homeland. They want to leave to protect themselves. Many go to Austria, some to Prussia, and quite a few to England. And when these nobles get to the other countries, they start talking to the nobles. So let's say a French noble goes to England. They're going to talk to English nobles and say, hey, have you heard what's happening in France? The royal family is sort of threatened. What can you do? What can your government do? And these émigrés are eventually going to be instrumental in gaining support to help the French people later on. Some people suggest to the king and queen, hey, you should leave too, and they refuse. They say, this is our country. This is who we lead, and this is who we are. We are not going to abandon our people. But they do, however, suggest to their closest friends and relatives, you should leave. So one of King Louis's brothers leaves. Marie Antoinette's favorite ladies in waiting, they leave for safety. If you remember, the National Assembly is in power. The National Assembly is the group. They formally, the Third Estate at the Estates General, they pull away for the Tennis Court Oath. They're going to continue to pass laws and discuss and debate and give people as much as possible liberty, equality, and fraternity. One way they do that is by taking more power from the church or the former Third Estate. They do this by selling church lands. The church owned almost 10% of all land in France before the Revolution. The National Assembly sells this land and then can use the profit for whatever they need to use it for. They also force priests to take an oath to this new system, to this new government. Many priests do not take the oath, And so they are sort of marked as potential troublemakers. But there are some who gladly take the oath and say, whatever it takes, I want to be with my community. I want to lead my flock, and they're going to do that. Another thing that the National Assembly does is to get the people more involved. They allow citizens, local communities, to elect the priests. Even citizens who aren't Catholic, Protestants or Jews, are allowed to now elect priests. Another thing the National Assembly does is they're trying to take away power from the Second Estate. They strip nobles of their titles. They're like, hey, you're wealthy, you have a great house, that's nice, but you don't get a special title anymore. You are not a special snowflake. So all this, again, trying to get rid of any remnants or reminders of the Ancien regime. Remember, Louis is still king. This picture on the left is King Louis XVI. He is just now wearing that revolutionary cap. He is trying to do what he thinks is best for the people, and he might be a little misinformed, but he is trying. He's wearing the revolutionary red. It looks like he's drinking in the revolution. If you looked close, it looks like the words he's drinking in are Vive la Révolution. He is trying to be a part of this, to help his people. He goes to the National Assembly and he is part of the discussions and the debates. But really, in practical terms, he has very little power. But at least he's still king. Tennis Court Oath. The goal of the Tennis Court Oath was to create a constitution. And finally, in the summer of 1791, the National Assembly creates that constitution. So hooray, we have accomplished our goal. Just like the American Constitution, they want a well-written, fancily worded preamble. So they just copy-paste the Declaration of Rights of Man and of the Citizen that they had written the year before. The goal of this Constitution is to establish popular sovereignty. That means that the people, that's the popular part, the people rule. That is sovereignty. So that the people are ruling. Now, they're not getting rid of the king, but that for the most part, the representatives of the people or the people themselves are ruling. This constitution establishes a very similar structure to the Americans. They use the three branches as proposed by Baron de Montesquieu. We have the legislative branch, already built in, the National Assembly, the deliberative group that will create the laws. We have the executive branch. The king keeps his job. He still gets to be king. He gets to cooperate with the National Assembly, and he has veto power, but not much else. One thing that is different from America is the judicial branch. If you remember back to Louis XIV, he created a court system that would follow royal rules rather than being localized. The Constitution of 1791 wants to get away from that, get away from the power of the king. So now we're going to a judicial system that is more connected to the local communities, that is run by the local community, so that your community votes for your local judge. So going back to how it was before Louis XIV. Another thing in this Constitution is the reorganization of the country itself, redrawing lines, reorganizing how the country runs. It's easier to explain this with the map. So they're going from provinces into departments. So here are the provinces. These were traditional. They had existed for centuries, organized by culture, language, sort of organized by culture, language, different dialects, different agricultural products. As you can see here, they vary in size, in shape, in population. With the Constitution and the creation of the départements, here you see they're trying to regulate and normalize these different sections so that the citizens have a better chance of getting involved in that local department government. It's much easier to be involved if, let's say, up in the north, if you look at Calvados, that is blue, sort of in the middle in the north. It's much easier to say, hey, I belong to Calvados and I can be involved in the government and the system of and the running of Calvados, rather than saying Normandy. Normandy over on the provinces map is much larger. So the goal of this is to get the citizens more involved and have government more run by the people. So all these are pretty good things. Here is a video about the National Assembly if you want to watch that. Again, a reminder that the royal family is living in Paris. They moved to Paris in October 1789 as a result of the Women's March. And they have a pretty sweet life. They are living in a royal palace called the Tuileries. It was located next to the Louvre. It no longer exists today. They get to leave occasionally for long weekends out to the country, to other palaces. It's not a bad way to live. They just, some people would prefer to have more space, like the queen and king. But it allows for the king to be near his citizens and for the king to participate with the National Assembly. However, Marie Antoinette isn't all that pleased. In 1791, she starts writing to some of those émigrés, those friends who left France. She is writing to relatives in other countries, in Austria, in Italy, in Prussia. And she's saying, we're here, we're in Paris, we haven't been hurt, but it's not nearly as good as it used to be. I would like to get back to the system that it used to be. So how can you help us? How can Austria help the French royal family? How can the nobles in England help the French royal family? And eventually they come up with a plan, an escape plan, and this is organized by their friend, and some say Marie Antoinette's lover, Count Fersen from Sweden. He works with some former Austrian diplomats to come up with an escape plan. They create a really large carriage that will carry the royal family, and the plan is to get over the border, to leave France, get over the border into German territory, where they will assemble an army that is loyal to the French royalty, and they will come back to France and reconquer the country. So they have this carriage built. It's very large, very noticeable. Royal family dresses up like servants, and in the middle of the night, they leave. And this carriage is so large that it takes much longer to get there to their first stopping point at Varennes. There was someone waiting for them at Varennes to help change their horses, give them information about the next location, all of that. But they took so long to get there that the person they were meeting at Varennes went to bed because it was so late. It's like, oh, they're not coming. They must have decided to do it another day. The royal family gets to the city of Varennes about 18 hours after they leave Paris, and they don't see the guy they're supposed to meet. So they just sit and wait, not considering that by this point, the National Assembly has realized the royal family is gone, and they have sent the army after them. So the royal family is just sitting around, and the historians say that there is a man sitting in the wine bar, sitting in the pub with the royal family, and he goes to pay his bill, has a handful of change, and looks at the handful of change, and looks at Louis. Looks at the handful of change, and looks at Louis, and realizes that they are the same face. So when the army comes in, it is this man who says, hey, the royal family's staying in this whole hotel over here. As a result of this escape attempt that fails, the royal family is taken back to Paris in disgrace. Now the National Assembly realizes you're trying to run away, you are abandoning your country. That does not look very good. And now the citizens are going to be a bit more upset with the royal family. And we keep talking about these similarities or copying the American Revolution. But there's one major difference with the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And that difference is location. The American Revolution was much easier to pull off because when you are writing pamphlets and speaking out about your king, it's much easier when that king is on the other side of an ocean. When you're speaking out against your king and you're writing and that king lives 10 miles away, it's a lot more difficult. So that is one huge difference and part of why eventually the French Revolution will be unsuccessful. All right, that's it for 4.7.